and he's pedal to the metal. Go, go, go!
Hello everyone and welcome one and all. It's great to be here and great to be back with PCF5 here in PSGL. And of course, so joining me before we get into things in the commentary box is going to be the one, the only Sartak Ayapa. How are we doing, mate? How are we feeling? Netherlands this time. How's the feel?
Yep. Zandvoort. I'm always excited for a track like Zandvoort, and I think it's the beginning of a flurry of tracks back to back, all exciting ones. But yeah, we're starting off with Zandvoort today. The steep inclines going into turn one, even I'm excited for it all. Even the last corner, I've seen a lot of drivers in different leagues, really spin out at the final corner of the last lap, even in some cases. Let's hope that's not the case in F5 this time around. But yeah, as always, on the edge of my seat.
And it's certainly a track to look forward to. No shortage of thrills, no shortage of great racing, as always tends to be PSGL. 14 corners, almost like a roller coaster more than it is a circuit here in the Netherlands. Beautiful circuit, Zandvoort. 2.6 miles, 2 DRS zones, inclines of, I believe, say up to 26 degrees of banking at some points. It certainly is a track to remember. And so we take a quick look at the standings before we jump into qualifying. We are wasting absolutely zero time here, folks. No reason to wait. We're here to see some great racers. We're here to see some great driving. And as we look at the standings, Noel Coleman consistent at the top, 24 points to his name so far. And the AlphaTauri of Yuki, 2 rounds of 10 points, 20 points. And Sven Schumacher, though, interestingly, actually been promoted upwards. So you can see that blue text, promoted. They have been moved up to a higher league. So that is going to be shaking up the championship for sure for drivers, constructors. It's a big one. It's a big change, and one that drivers are going to have their whereabouts, because this is going to shake up the order. But we're heading into the game now. And of course, keep PSGL, PCF5, and we are away.
Aston Martin, first one out onto the track in the form of Elliot Noren. And I'm sure a bunch of drivers will follow suit. I believe his teammate does in fashion as well. There were moments of excellence for this team in Bahrain, especially Momento. He was in the mix up in top 4. It almost seemed like a podium was possible up until the penalties, of course, and incidents that followed. And yeah, more than half the grid are out on track for the qualifying session. 18 minutes. Who will be on the top of the time sheets today? Sven Schumacher, the usual, of course, the usual man out there up on top, but it seems like he's not out on track today.
Yes, with Sven Schumacher at the picture, it's going to be the likes of maybe, say, Noel Coleman coming out on top. Going to see if anyone else can go for a challenge. As you can see, a little bit of a shake-up in terms of constructors. So Alexander Dimas joining AlphaTauri team. So Joris there as well. Oh, that's the Haas. My mistake. Minor color misinterpretation there. But that's, with all being said, going to be on board with Elliot Noren. Going to be seeing how they handle this roller coaster of a circuit. We can hop in on the onboard with the Aston Martin, seeing just how they handle it. You can see trying to maximize the track width, almost peeling out a little bit as we go through the most banked of the corners, and you can really use that banking to your advantage. You're flying through these corners at some insane speeds, but with the road pushing you into the apex, you can get away with speeds that you really can't get away with anywhere else.
Yeah, we'll see a bunch of these drivers get away with speeds soon enough, but the Astons, they got a lot of catching up to do compared to Bahrain if they really want to put up a fight in the constructors title fight. Clearly Noren leading the charge for now. Momento, he did have that showing last time out in Bahrain, and yeah, I just hope both of them can perform at the same level the McLarens have been since last race. Leo as well as Noel Coleman of course, sporting the hashtag Donkey Seb, tipping the hat to his role model, I'd presume. And yeah, first lap time on the board, 1 minute 11.031, quickly beaten by Momento, his own teammate, Norin's own teammate.
Yeah, and everyone's going to be flying through now. Leo Lund, 110.7. Next is going to be the Alfa Romeo of Elfin, 110.365. Can a Ferrari match it? No, it's just a Honda half a tenth behind as Noel Carman comes through, 110.342. Everyone is flying through, seeing what they can get away with as the times are starting to stack up. Ferraris, P3 and P4. Alexander Dimas immediately breaking that two-driver formation as everyone is flying through. Yuki, P5. Second Haas here about to set their main lap here. Let's say another Red Bull going across to say 111.606. The immediate feeling is that the Alfa Romeos and the McLarens are going to be drivers to watch.
Surely enough, Alpine back up there in the top three. Meanwhile, his teammate had a nasty spin in the final corner, as I spoke about even before the qualifying session started, and he headed into the pits for a quick wing change. He had lost his front wing, but we can see a bunch of those times come up on our board. Kintex seems like that sparkle he had back in Spain remains yet to be seen. Even in Bahrain, it didn't seem the best, and yeah, hopefully we get to see them jump back. Joris won't have company in terms of battles out on track, surely enough, from his very own teammate. We saw a lot of that back in Bahrain with his Haas teammate. So he's left standing alone for the race at Zandvoort.
And he is going to have to really put that fight in. Alberto Barros here, P16, yet to set a time. It's going to be jumping up to P12 as they get 111.091, although it's going to get displaced by Joris, 110.507. We're leaving just Super Gaming in the pits right now after that wing change. Only driver yet to set a time.
Impressive lap time by Joris. I don't think we've seen him even in the top 10 in qualifying sessions before. So a lap time like that around Zandvoort, maybe track evolution playing into that lap time right there. Perhaps the rest of the drivers are going to be out on track soon and would want to. Did I see a bit of drizzle?
Yeah, I think everyone's getting their best laps they can now because it looks like rain is starting to fall on the circuit here in the Netherlands. And look, you can see that the rain is starting to come down. It looks overcast at the start of the session. That has immediately changed. And now I think drivers are going to have no choice. But if they want some running out there, maybe switching over to the Inters.
Yeah, a bunch of the drivers coming out onto the track right now are very brave. Some of them on the softs. In the likes of the top runners, Alpine, Alex Berry, Alexander Dimas, and Yuki. All on softs along with a bunch of other drivers as well. Will that rain increase? And as it increases, how much of a challenge it's going to be for the drivers? Because surely enough, with softs out on a track like this one, rain coming down, not the ideal of scenarios.
And there's the cue from race control. DRS has been disabled. We are officially in wet running territory. And this begs the question of anyone out there running on the softs, like we're on board with Noel Carman here, current leader, current pole here in qualifying in the Netherlands. Are they going to commit to a soft run, or are they going to have to go in for the Inters? As the time ticks on, I have to wonder, is that balance sweeping more one way or another in their mind, or are they just on the soft tyres, going to go full commit while they're out and then switch over to a wet tyre? Because you're on the wet tyre, there's no chance of you catching a slick time.
Yeah, precisely. And you can already see the bunch of drivers who had just come out for their outlaps on softs have headed right back in. And who knows whether they'll be out on track once again, considering those soft times are the best ones. But it does look like Justin, that racer, is going to roll the dice and come out on intermediates. Won't have quite of a positive effect on his lap time, surely enough. But yeah, he's the only one with the Inters on.
Oh, and you see, you look at on board with Noel Carman, went for the commit, opted to stay on the soft, see if they could try their luck, and immediately coming out the first corner, it's a spin, it's a full 360, and the McLaren is into the wall there. Hopefully not too much damage, hopefully not much of a time loss. But everyone is heading back into the pits, I presume, for said intermediates now.
Yeah, if anyone's sitting pretty on top, it's clearly Noel Kalman with that lap time. And unless there's a wild chance coming into the tail end of this qualifying session that the rain does, dissipate and we don't get to see a wet track anymore, yeah, he's sorted. He's provisional pole sitter for now, and will seal that pole.
Said you can just immediately see the grip difference. Say Noel Carmen almost sideways for half of that lap. Whether that's by intention or by nature of the track surface, you can tell me. But seeing that he has to go on to the runoffs on so much of the track is kind of telling of everything. But I think we may have just seen qualifying, the fastest ever qualifying wrap-up in PSGL so far. Unless the rain clears, and you can see drivers are starting to retire. They're starting to bow out of the qualifying session here. Unless the track clears up, we're not going to see a time improvement. Sure, maybe drivers will get to climatize to the intermediates a little bit, but if I'm someone like Super Gaming, I'm going to be mad. Because I haven't got a time on the board, and it's only wet running now.
Yeah, I mean, one fumble out the last corner costed him qualifying in its entirety. And as you can see, Noel Kalman going sideways more than straight. Soft tires are clearly not the tire of choice. In intermediates, they're not going to set a quicker lap time in comparison to the softs. So the second half of the grid is clearly hoping for this rain to go away come the last couple of minutes of qualifying itself. And of course, the top three will be hoping for it to end just this way to seal their positions ahead of the race.
Well, you can see even with the intermediate tires on just how much drivers are struggling for grip. We're on board with Justin right now, P9 110.753. We're not going to see an improvement. We're going to see just how difficult, especially on a track of this nature, how hard it is to wrestle these machines around Zandvoort. You see, coming out the banking, especially where there's such a weight transfer, such a transfer in grip, that it almost completely throws your car off balance. I would say this is up there with being one of the hardest tracks to drive in the wet.
Yeah, so much so, Benz thinks it's worth it coming out on the wets possibly, which really isn't playing into his favor in terms of setting a quicker lap time in qualifying. We got 7.5 minutes left, so drivers can keep hoping for this rain to completely disappear. But it doesn't look like that's the case. And yeah, I'm still on board Justin, that racer, and he's clearly struggling. He's probably a tad bit better than how Noel Kalman was out on track.
Well, don't forget as well, even if the rain clears, you still need time for all the water to drain, for the dry line to be formed. It's just too much time to wait. And I think, like we're seeing with Justin here, even though it's not a time improvement, we're seeing drivers being conscious of the weather, using this time to get themselves acclimatized to wet running so that if the race comes to that, then they are prepared, they are ready. Because it's a fundamentally different skill set and thinking to drive in the wet versus the dry. You can't push the limits anywhere near as much. You can't afford to be risky, especially when you're dealing with on-track traffic. So I think just getting that key running in on the inters might prove crucial to the actual race strategy.
Yep. Surely enough, that will be the case. But then again, going into the race, will we have a wet start is a question. Will we have a dry start perhaps? That would really be a left field case. But as you can see, Alberto follows suit with Kintex, his teammate, by the looks of it, and has retired from the qualifying session, both qualifying outside of the top 10.
Let's there we go. That's a Benzi Fazekas we're on board with now. Only driver to be on the full wets. But you can see with so much rain coming down, I wouldn't even fault them in the decision. I think it's maybe a little bit premature to call full wets. Maybe it's still say heavy rain for a couple more minutes before calling that. But even so, you can see with the amount of water that these tires can displace and to still be struggling for grip, the roller coaster is unforgiving.
Yeah, and it was a clear showing of just that, what you explained, Sappy, as Justin, that racer, he came around the final corner, much like Super Gaming, but unlike Super Gaming, couldn't head back into the pits. He lost his front wing and he was forced to retire from the qualifying session. So we got about 4 retirements so far, and about 13 drivers hopeful that in the last couple of minutes. By the looks of it, it's not the case. We're down to the last 5 minutes of the qualifying session. So we will continue to have rain, and I don't think the top 5 are going to change at this point.
Well, I really don't think that anyone is going to opt, short of getting some into running, that anyone is going to opt to go out on the track at all, especially if I'm looking at top spots, Aelfin, Carmen. There's no reason for me to go out on track. I've secured the top time. I've got nothing but time to lose, and maybe even my tyre budget as well. So if I'm in that position, I might as well just wait it out in the pits for race start.
Yep, precisely. I don't think I've seen Alpine come out on track and just follow the same strategy you just made very clear of. And he's just been sitting in the pits. He's second fastest front row start, a brilliant one at that. We've seen him start from the front row on more than one occasion, clearly. And yeah, he'll be looking to do a lot of damage limitation in terms of at the start in comparison to back in Spain, where he last started on the front row. And yeah, he seems like he's in an ideal spot to get the race going. Just under 4 minutes left, and you get to see Alexander Dimas, Joris, 2 outliers perhaps in terms of doing well in qualifying itself. They've clearly hit the lottery in some ways. But yeah, you got to feel for the likes of Leo Lund, who finds himself in the thickness of the action at race start, will find himself in the thickness of the action, being in P10. Very far away to his teammate in comparison to Bahrain.
Is a bit of a disparity that he's going to have to make up. But we've seen in the past that having a teammate further down the pecking order gives you the advantage of having, say, a strong wingman really sort of sticking the fight in the middle, especially if you've got any rivals in that mix. They can really shake up the longer-term race order. But I have to wonder, Super Gaming, they're the only driver to not have set a time. And I know, even though we're in the wet, they should still go out there and set something. If nothing else, to get that confidence back. You think they had one run, lost their wing, and went back into the pit. My confidence, if I was in that situation, would be rock bottom. So I would be heading back out there just to re-establish a little bit of faith in my car and the track. Even though it will guaranteed be at the bottom of the timesheets, it would go a long way in terms of restoring my confidence.
Yeah, surely enough it will, and hopefully Super Gaming's lending a ear to the broadcast itself, and hopefully he'll be out on track. And as I say that, I saw an Inter switch on from the softs next to Super Gaming's name, so hopefully he is coming out on track for a lap to set a time, at least one time, in the qualifying session ahead of the race at Zandvoort. Sector 3 lights up yellow, so clearly a couple of cars still going sideways despite being on the Inters, and that's the Red Bull kicking its rear out along the banking of Sector 3, the exit of Sector 3, which I hope we get to see a lot of wheel-to-wheel action around come the race.
I think, say, the key action points are going to be around the DRS zones, as they tend to be, but also coming through, I say, around turns 3 and 4. We've seen a few dives, seen a couple of flash points in there in the past, so I would not be remiss of looking for some action there. Sector 2, it's a lot more flowy, can't really get many moves in down there, but certainly the exits of the DRS zones and the turn 3 or 4 complex, it's certainly a place to keep an eye out for.
Fair enough. And yeah, we've come to the tail end of this qualifying session. The last minute, the final minute, if you might. And nothing's changed on the timesheets for sure. 1 minute 10.342 coming from Noel Carmen. That's the fastest lap time and will remain the fastest lap time, which means it seals pole position for the driver in the McLaren.
And it's a great performance there, and really sort of what they needed. They got the lead in the championship, but it's been 2 second places. And of course, if I want to lead, there's 2 factors I'm looking for. There's that consistency where Coleman keeps bringing the show. Like, it's only 2 rounds in, but it's still very telling. The other half, though, is that sort of top end, what I call a wow factor. And Coleman has put in some brilliant performances and really shown that. But what they need to cap it off is if they can play their cards right here, they're on pole. This is the best chance they've had so far of getting that much-deserved race win to really sort of cement their dominance at the sharp end. Say, with Sven Schumacher out the picture and Yuki just behind with 2 third-place finishes, P2 in the championship, they've got some real good options on their hands here.
Yeah, if there's any race they want to be at a 100% team performance and at an individual levels performance, it's got to be this one. With the absence of Sven Schumacher's and even Yuki being down in P6, perhaps Leo can catch up to Yuki at the race start to make up for that title fight early on, and clearly they'll be running away with it at the end of Zandvoort. But the race is still yet to start, and as qualifying ends.
And everyone is starting to peel back through now. Super Gaming finally being able to set a time on the board. It's only going to be a 1:18, but it's still going to be enough to put a number on there. Get a bit more track time, which is essential in a situation like this. And the last few runners are out on track as we speak, like Alexander Dimas, soon to finish their lap. And round off the session, we'd say 5 retirees, but given the situation, they're not exactly remiss for doing so. It's going to be Noel Carmen taking pole position here in the Netherlands with a great early quali and really just sort of jumping on the opportunity while the track was dry to get themselves some key positions. So there you go. Noel Carmen, 110.342, sealing that pole position here for round 3 PSGL F5. Elfin taking P2, just 23 milliseconds behind, and then just over half a tenth is going to be the Ferrari of Alex Berry. Joris and Alexander Dimas take P4 and P5 together, so bridging that second and third row with the 2 Hasses, and then the AlphaTauri of Yuki down in P6, Norby in P7, Memento, Justin, Leo Lund rounding off the top 10, and you can see there everyone else who is going to be forming the grid. 17 drivers, PSGL PC F5, sponsored by GT Omega. Be sure to check them out. Use code PSGL for a discount, and you're about to hear a word from them, from our lovely sponsors, as we head into the race. All right, and just as a reminder, folks, before we head into the race, here is your current driver standings for PCF5. Noel Carmen, top of the sheets, 24 points. Yuki, 20 points. Bit further down in the standings and needs to get those key points up. They've got an opportunity here, but their teammate is out of the picture. They're going to have to put some heavy lifting. And then you say you got the Ferraris and Leo Lund taking the top 5. But this is all about what's happening in the now. And as we head to round 3 of PCF5 in the Netherlands, Zandvoort, it's going to be great. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, just as much here as well on my side. I think at the start, I think we're going to see a bit of a left field start of sorts. Perhaps not many incidents, I'd like to think, but we got 5 lights regardless, so let's see it firsthand as the 5 lights go out and away they go. You can see that McLaren get a spectacular start. Saw a few fumbles in the midfield at the very beginning, and around the outside comes a Ferrari, in fact, of Alex Berry on Alpine early on, up a position already, and there's a Haas tumbling down the order, and Justin, that racer, capitalizing on a brilliant start. Norby to follow, so the Ferraris are steaming at Zandvoort.
Yeah, it's a great start there from the Ferraris, and P2 and P6 right now. Leo Lund's jumping up to P9, 2 abreast through the bank's left-hander as everyone is just scrambling for those paces. It's Noah's Ark up in here at the start of round 3 at PSGL, and everyone is fighting tooth and nail for those spots. Top of the field, midfield, back end. It's all to play for. Barros not getting the great start they otherwise would have wanted, but it's going to be Elliot Nora and Elias Lima fighting for top spots between the two of them. Battle for P11. Aston Martin and Red Bull duking it out side by side, trading left, trading right. Williams trying to get joined in on the action. That is going to be Kintix peeking around the outside, not quite going to have the opportunity there.
Yeah, battles from the front of the pack all the way to the back. Even in the midfield, you can see the other Aston Martin trying its best. Close in on Justin That Racer. Momento clearly looking at Justin That Racer get a spectacular start. And a bit envious perhaps as the fastest lap time comes from our race leader Noel Coleman. Alex Berry to follow, followed by Alpine, who's lost position from start. The Haas is sitting well in the top 5.
And it's got a great move there. So they not put a foot wrong so far. Yuki's lost out big time throughout all of this chaos. Down in P15, they've got a Herculean task ahead of them in order to try and catch up to the rest of the field. Kintix is going to see what they can do against Elliot Norin here. It's going to try and reignite that battle, as Fazekas has since dropped behind the Red Bull in that battle for P10. Jumbling up and down, but there's a few big drop-offs. As I say, Barros 2 seconds behind now. Managed to claw back some of that deficit, but I can't help but wonder if they've got damage to their car. And Ailfin and Alex Berry are going to be soon eyeing up that top spot as DRS is going to activate next lap.
Yeah, but if anyone's eyeing for a spot, it's Joris on to Alexander Dimas. The two Haases fighting for P4 soon enough, I'm sure. Joris seemed like he was ready to mount a challenge into the entry of Sector 3, but didn't seem like Joris was ready for it. Again, he's falling back now to almost a half a second's gap to his teammate, which was about a 10th just a lap ago.
And there you go, say Alberto Barros having that clean air, having the medium tyre, the compound advantage. They got the fastest lap of the race so far. Although at the cost of 4 positions, I have to wonder whether it was worth it. Though the Hasses, they're both within about half a second of each other, although they've got to be in communications. Let them race or play the team game. That's the formative decision they've got to make. They got 36 laps and 3 of them are already down. So if they're going to commit to a strategy, they've got to make a choice quick as Joris gets very close to the back of P4's rear. That getting right up and personal with that gearbox. Someone's going to have to make a judgment call. Otherwise, these two are just going to sandbag one another and get really into some trouble. Although that's Memento. Someone is going to be out. That's going to be Memento, dropping right down to P17. The car is survivable, but the damage done to their position is not. That's -9, and they are all the way down at the low end. Barros has a key opportunity here to maybe make it back to the rest of the field. They're within 1.2 seconds, just outside of that DRS, although they're not quite going to have it out in the clear yet. They're going to have to use those mediums to best effect if they want to claw back in.
Probably another outlier in this race so far, saying fastest lap times now is Elias Lima up in a P8 as they pass Leo right into Sector 1. And on a charge they are on. Up next is Justin That Racer. I believe Alberto came out on the mediums as well. So they're the only pair out on mediums on lap number 4 of Zandvoort. And yeah, peculiar how much of an effect this will be on their race come the second half. Post the pit stops of the front half of the grid. Who knows, but right now he's on a charge, Lima.
Well, they just can't afford to be stuck behind any other traffic. Themselves and Barros are the only drivers with a compound advantage, and they need to bring that to full effect. Barros back in DRS range. They've got a key opportunity here if they can wield themselves to best effect. Leo Lund actually, I think, getting purple sector 2 there. Just a show of intent of how hard they're pushing, how much they want this position back. Is they're saying that, yes, you may be on the mediums, but I am driving my absolute heart out. Though without the ERS to their disposal, they're surely going to be burning resources, and that may come back to bite them in the second half of the race as Lima takes the fastest lap, 1:14.123.
And up ahead, Justin That Racer makes the pass on Norby on the main straight, which is peculiar because it almost seemed like the Ferraris were off to a great start, and with the Haas's clearly not really gelling well with them, with each other up ahead. Norby could have capitalized on that, but instead has to concede a position to Justin That Racer. Elias Lima, teammate of Justin's, is clearly waiting and watching, and soon enough will be on Norby's gearbox.
And Norby themselves is kind of just waiting and looking at their options. They know the threat that's behind them, although that is Fazekas. P15 now, dropping all the way back down. Looks like they had a spin of some kind, really struggling there for grip as Barros is kissing the rear of that Alpine. And a lot of drivers, we've seen a few of them have some spins so far. I think it's just a testament to how challenging this track is as Vazekas is pushed almost, it looks like, into the gravel. Barros is immediately going to be losing the tail on the final set of corners. They're going to be backwards, to say the two of them completely sort of compromising each other's race. First it's contact, then it's a spin. And all that's done, though, is left these final three drivers, Memento, Fazekas, and Barros, really just sort of leaving them hung out to dry.
Yeah, with another spin for Barros, he's clearly not having the best of times out on track. He'll be hoping for this to go his way with a safety car or two, but that's a bit of a stretch in terms of hoping for anything. Up ahead, however, the only change in position in the top 5 happens to be Alex Berry making that pass on Alpine at race start. No other changes such, but Justin that racer capitalizing on a 3-position jump since start, of course, in the top 10. Elias Lima, that charge is on. As I mentioned once before, Sector 2 lighting up yellow for Barros once again, so he's clearly sent himself into a spin. No, it's Kintex this time around. I see him tumbling down the order as well.
Yeah, that's going to be Kintex, and that's going to be Aelfin, for whatever reason, has dropped back down massively. So they compromised their Sector 3, and that's going to put them behind not one, but 2 Hasses. You had Joris eyeing up the position, eyeing up the move, and trying to bide their time, but whatever pressure they put on seems to have clearly worked, as now that Alfa Romeo is immediately back on the forward fight. Elliot Norim, 113.880, current fastest lap of the session, and Aelfin looking to get a little bit of retribution for their drop-off. But that's Kintex pit lane retirement. Surprising that we haven't seen that from Barros, despite being over 30 seconds further behind. But that is, I can respect for wanting to stick it out.
Precisely, you love to see drivers that really stick it out despite a bunch of incidents that unravel themselves. Regardless, Justin that racer next on top of Alpine. A bit of deja vu for Alpine perhaps from Spain, but he's still in the top 5. He was in a worse position, and as I say that, that's Joris who spun out into the barriers and tumbles down the order beyond P10 down to P12. Had a bad exit out of Sector 2.
We usually see the absolute inverse, though. It's usually when we come off of a wet session, drivers are less accident prone because they're trained themselves to be a little more gingerly on the throttle, a little bit gentler with the steering application, because wet has less grip. So it's usually the complete inverse. We're seeing drivers less accident prone, although I think the switch back to the dry has sort of lulled drivers into a little bit of a false sense of security, and I think that's baiting them, especially on the exits of some longer corners where they're used to the banking helping them out, only for the track to be flat and no such grip assistance.
Exactly, and as I say that, Alberto Barros, I mean, really, we need to tip our hats to him. He's going to be lapped now by Noel Carmen soon enough, but he is sticking himself out there. I think he's had another incident into Sector 2. Surprised he's not in the pits yet, or maybe it's just increased temps in his tires, but he's not having the best times. Regardless, Super Gaming, 7 positions since start. He started all the way at the back of the pack, and now he's running P10. He's trying to mount a challenge onto Norin for that P9 position, and on the main straight, he just might.
Yeah, it's biding his time, picking your chances, and fighting when the time is right. That's the name of the game here in Formula 1, and the name of the game here in Zandvoort especially, as it looks like the DRS is going to be in his favor, but it's so going to be in Norin's as well. He was just a few tenths within that window, and that key window is going to be able to fend off the Alfa Romeo offensive, at least for now, although that gap is ever so slowly waning as the corners progress on.
Yeah, and that McLaren ahead of Norin is in a fight in its own right as well. Elias Lima's ahead of Leo Lund, and Leo's actually keeping up with the Red Bull, of course, who's doing a nifty job at keeping up with Norby. I wonder if Norby's actually doing a pretty good job at holding up Elias Lima, because on the mediums, Elias Lima clearly not able to make that pass onto the Ferrari for about 4 laps now, despite his teammate making the pass about 4 laps ago.
And yeah, I think, say for Lima right now, it's just about locking in the position that they have. They've done super well, considering that they've been on the mediums and the only other real driver to do so in the field besides Barros. So I think they just sort of need to net whatever advantage they can, maybe push against Norby for another position, but don't overdo it before that medium drop-off kicks in.
Yeah, sure enough. Justin, that racer, however, no mediums, no problem, unlike his teammate. Purple sector as well, out of 3. But yeah, he was on the gearbox of Alpines, and he's on the edge, peeks down the inside in sector 1. But will hold himself back. Sector 2, we're not going to see a pass, that's for sure, unless Justin pulls off a miracle. Sector 3, clearly enough, he'll be breathing down the Alfa Romeo's gearbox once again.
It's just about keeping that consistent pressure. He's really done a good job, I think, of not putting a foot wrong, regardless of the threats that are behind him. He knows that Norby's right behind him. And in fact, we've seen some slight adjustments to their line in a defensive manner to make sure that Norby stays in just that position. Though the other Red Bull is not having as good of a time. Looks like they really struggled out of the exit and into the second DRS zone. They dropped down to P8 behind Lund, and now they're on a defensive from Norin. Though Justin is going to be keeping the pressure on Elfin ahead in order to maybe secure that P4. Who knows? Everyone's got the DRS at the front end of the train, so nobody is going to be getting any big gains. Regardless, though, Justin throws a dummy on the inside. Again, about those moves, making sure that he's got that pressure on and that Elfin is well aware of the threat that looms.
Surely enough, in his rearview mirrors, that Red Bull might be just gleaming as at the back of the pack, Momento makes that pass on to Leonard. But up ahead, the top 3, they've not put a foot wrong either. Alexander Dimas is doing a mighty job in comparison to his teammate, keeping that gap as close as possible to Alex Berry, and Alex Berry doing the same to Noel Kalman. Not a foot wrong, despite having DRS for multiple laps. Now Alex Berry and Alexander Dimas still remains behind that McLaren.
Well, I think where we're going to see the big decider of this game is in the pit strategy and in the ERS. Now, everyone in the DRS is opting not to pass. Like, Berry's in the prime position to pass right now, but he's opted not to because he's got 75% battery. He's looking to charge that as high as he can, because as soon as he's got that position ahead, he's immediately going to be in that defensive spot. Although it looks like that is going to be a full core safety car coming out, as we appear to have had an incident somewhere on the track.
I see Elias Lima heading into the pits. I don't think he was involved in an incident. It's just capitalizing on the yellow flags and getting those hard tires on. But I didn't catch an incident myself, so could be Barros.
I'd say could be Barros very well, yep. But even so, Barros has a prime opportunity here. They've got a lot of time to make up. They've also got a front wing missing, so it might have been them that pulled out the full course safety car, maybe pieces of carbon on track that the marshals need to quarantine the circuit in order to clear before we get back to full running.
And a bunch of cars, of course, will catch up to the rest of the field. Alberto Barros will head into the pits for a change of tires also, I presume, considering 10 laps on the mediums have been done and dusted. Fazekas out on a fresh set of mediums, maybe turning a page out of Elias Lima's book, perhaps. But how much that'll work out into his race strategy come race end is one to watch out for. We're on lap number 12, folks, of race number 3, if my count stays right, of F5 season 32 here at PSGL. And Noel Kalman leads this race ahead of Alex Berry and Alexander Dimas. Top 3, I think they're probably the most consistent top 3 we've seen so far this season, or maybe that's just after starting on the hards early into this race. Alpine getting the short end of the stick, but hasn't fallen out of the top 5. as we saw him just that way back in Spain. So yeah, he'll be hoping to have a top 5 finish at the very least at Zandvoort after a fumble at a race start.
I think that if there's going to be a big winner from this safety car coming out, it is Lima. Purely because they were on the mediums, and now they can viably run these hards to the end if they manage them well enough. That pit stop deficit that they've made up is going to work wonders for the late game strategy, because all of the leaders, all on the hard tires, but all, crucially, didn't go in when the safety car was called. Now, some of them did have the opportunity, but chose not to, purely because the hards have not had their life used yet, and the mediums would not have made it to the end under this point. So they would have sacrificed track position, they would have had to take a second stop anyway, because the mediums wouldn't have taken them the whole way there. And they might be on a little bit of the back foot from some of the runners further behind as a result.
Yeah, Elias Lima will be hoping to get the heat into those tires as soon as possible and get it heading, because he's going to be primed for the picking with 3 medium runners right behind him.
And as we see, safety car in this lap, so Noel Carmen controls the pace of the queue, slowing right down here, making sure that they've kept the heat in those hard tires. They say hardest compound, lowest grip, longest life, but also hardest to keep the heat in for. So all of this slow running, those carcasses are going to be cooled right down, say sub 90 even, which he's going to have to quickly resolve before we get to the final corner and build up that speed, winding it right to the final edge. And you can see everyone is just chomping at the bit, waiting, raring to go. They need to get a good start here, because Coleman, if they can get the jump, then they can get a free position. And Coleman knows that. He's trying to swoop, but there we go. Race pace is enabled. It's a great getaway there from the McLaren. He's really got the jump on the rest of the field. Look at that gap. Look at that challenge from Alexander Dimas and Alex Berry. They're fighting neck and neck immediately, and that's going to be a tip on the rear. Ailfin down to P14. They're dropping right to the lower end of the field, to say scrambling in turn 1 to try and recover. Barros going for a pit lane retirement at behind. Didn't get that opportunity to make up lost time. It's just too far gone. They're making that judgment call. Save the car for when they get a chance to fight again. But Ailfin dropping right down to the bottom end of the field like a stone.
Maybe I said it too many times, but it's been all over again for Ailfin, and very cheeky by our race leader, leaving the challengers out to fight each other in fact at race start, with Dimas almost seeming to have made the pass on Alex Berry, but couldn't have done it at the end of the straight. And yeah, he's gotten the race lead, and a prominent one at that, and half a second's gap to Alex Berry, much like as it was before the safety car, and not much of a change in the midfield. Of course, Justin, that racer, still ahead of Norby, Leo ahead of Norin, and Yuki in the top 10. Super Gaming to follow, Momento in the mix.
Yes,
3 retirements in this race so far.
And then Fazekas is going to get a really nice swing around the final corner, and it's going to rocket around Memento in that Aston Martin to take P10. Really good use of the momentum there. Superior grip of the mediums while they have them, putting them to great use. Immediately going to get that pressure mounted as they're peeking around the outside of Super Gaming, trying to see what they can do.
And at the start, Elias Lima was clearly a sitting duck, but up the order, of course, Leo has made the pass on the Ferrari and was trying his best to edge closer to his teammate, Noel Carmen, who's in the lead at this race. Fazekas breathes down the gearbox of Super Gaming, who's trying to do the same to Yuki and Norn, so a bit of a proper DRS train in the midfield, with the most prominent gap between that McLaren and Ferrari in P5 and P6. And on the main straight, I expect more than just one move along the pack.
Yeah, the midfield is set to have a couple of jumps, a couple of big moves. So you've got Leo Lund trying to look around and see what they can get away with. You've got Fazekas trying to use that compound advantage on Super Gaming, and looks like they're poised to do just that. Right on the tail, right on the gearbox. He's going to have the space around the outside. DRS being enabled after this point, and Fazekas doesn't even need it. Up into P9. Great move there. Just pure pace and pure trajectory alone. They're slowly siphoning themselves out and up the field.
Yeah, with the pace he's got, he seems like he's ready to pick off Yuki and Norin within a corner. But yeah, he's gonna have to fight for that one. They're in a fight of their own, the AlphaTauri and the Aston Martin. I reckon Sector 3, he could possibly make the pass, but yet again, it's the medium tires. So for now, he's sitting well, and the odds are in his favor.
Yeah, Yuki almost got given a little bit of a mulligan with this one as they dropped right down to the bottom end of the field. Now with the safety car, managed to recover to P8, back of the queue of the top train. All of them hard 15 laps old by this point. But he's under threat, and looking at the connection, it looks like they are still having a few issues there, which is going to spook the likes of Fazekas into actually committing to a move.
Yeah, it's almost like Yuki's the one putting any kind of pressure on Fazekas despite being ahead. But yeah, as you can see, Fazekas keeping a gap on Yuki as Yuki makes a brilliant pass down the inside on Norin, but Norin's gonna come right back for his position. Gonna try to switch back down the inside, perhaps not. The quicker car indeed is that AlphaTauri out on track.
They are all looking to get those moves done early in the lap because the rest of the lap is more just about getting that perfect line. There's no real fighting to be had at these sections short for the second DRS zone that you can really get away with, or at least not without losing significant time to the field. So drivers sort of bide their time, save their ERS, save their resource. Norin still has 87%, so he's got plenty of power left in the tank to reassert their position. So I think they're just opting to bide their time.
You remember saw Noel Carmen really get into form on the hard tires. Despite it aging, it seems like he's taught Leo Lund the very same, and he seems to be on a charge of his own. He's made that pass on Norby early into that safety car restart, and now he seems like he's within 3/10 of Justin that racer. Perhaps we see a move from him in a lap or two, but right now he's gonna have to stick it out there behind the Red Bull.
So Limas getting 113.7 on the hard tyres. A great move there, and going to cement that fastest lap with an attack on Jashki. Although he's not going to get it so easily. So that Alpine is going to be holding the inside, using those mediums to good effect to reassert that position. Although I think Lima is certainly not going to take that one lying down by any stretch of the imagination. On front though, Leo Lund continuing to close that gap to Justin in P4. That Red Bull is looking prime for the taking. And even with the DRS train that's formed ahead, we're starting to see a crossing point where drivers are either getting more aggressive or opting to nestle into their own space ahead of the transfer window on the tyres.
Yeah, meanwhile, the other Alpine as well, mounting that fight to the Aston Martin. Yuki really played this well, making that early pass on to Norin a couple laps ago, opening up a sort of a breathing space for himself, with Fazekas having to make the pass on the Aston Martin even before making the pass on the AlphaTauri and around the final corner, and a brilliant one at that around the outside. The Alpine makes that pass on the Aston Martin out, and up into the P8 goes Fazekas.
As Yuki, fastest lap again, knocking it down. Elfin going one better, saying, nope, actually I'll have that. Thank you very much. Got that clean air, and even with the hard tyres, putting down a rocketing performance to show what they're made of. Yuki, though, looking to see what moves they can get away with. Although I have to think that at this point, they are just trying to keep up with the queue of hard runners ahead of them, rather than going for anything too risky.
Sure enough, and with 18 laps on the hard tires, you'd think slowly the drivers are gonna start evaluating when to really pit to get that jump on their closest competitor. Of course, the top 6 still within a second of each other. Who will pull off the best undercuts and the overcuts? And by the looks of it, I'm pretty sure Noel Carmen, a lot's running in his mind with Alex Berry to follow, and Alexander Dimas not even edged beyond half a second. And who's that? Tumbling down the order, it's an Aston Martin and its Memento.
Yes, they managed to keep the car intact, but that is going to be them tumbling all the way down to P14. Norby is going to be the first driver to pit here, and that sort of solves a question I had in my mind. These top runners, they're all running the same tyre strategy, so they can't afford to go in at the same time. That double stack would be lethal, so who's going to decide who goes when? Is it going to be the front runner taking more of the run to reserve that track position? Maybe get a bit of clean air? Or is it going to be the wingman going first, making sure they get the jump on the competition with the undercut? And this is where you see the strategies start to play out and really look into the chessboard that is Formula One.
Yeah, I'm sure the McLaren drivers are actively communicating as Leo gets so close to Justin, that racer, almost bumping into the rear of that Red Bull as he goes through into Sector 3. Norby, the first Ferrari in, the second Ferrari, Alex Berry waiting, biding his time to see what Noel Carmen's move will be next. Yuki, perhaps in some ways, is at an advantage with his teammate out for this race. No possibility of double stop in Sector 3, lights up yellow, bit of carnage, not carnage as such, but that Red Bull follows suit of the Haas and Alpha Tauri to follow Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo Super Gaming. Yuki, Justin the Racer, Alexander Dimas all into the pits as we have a full course yellow.
And that is, yeah, full core yellow, because that is Fazekas out of the race. And crucially, you've got the race leaders who have jumped the safety car. They've managed to get around it. This is going to be a big turning point for the strategy of these racers. A lot of the midfield going straight into the pits, capitalizing on that immediately, and are going straight onto the mediums. That's just going to leave 3 drivers who need to make a judgment call and need to go into those pits basically now. And that's going to be the 2 McLarens and the Ferrari. But do they double stack? They have no real choice. They have to.
As we were just talking about the McLaren pair, my oh my. Elias Lima on the hard tire seems like he's in an opportunistic position himself, being in the top 5 now. Alexander Dimas, an instant reaction to head into the pits, and no wonder Justin that racer follows through with a full course yellow to follow. Brilliant reactions by those drivers in the top 5. But yeah, it's all to see for what these McLaren drivers do now, because it does seem like they have got no choice and they follow suit. Yeah, they head into the pits. Leo, Alex Berry, Noel Carmen all into the pits, which means the race lead itself heads into the hands of Leonard up in front for the first time in the PSGL. I'd imagine he's leading a race ahead of Elias Lima, and who will come out behind those 2.
Yeah, that double stack was really the only option for the McLarens. And to add insult to injury, Coleman and Berry both have 5-second penalties, I assume, for speeding in the pit lane. So that is going to be a black mark on their name. That's going to really taint the result and really have to change up the strategy in response. Though Leo Lund down into P10 in the mix and the heat of the order, as so far, current leaders, Leonard Jaschke, Elias Lima, and Alexander Dimas.
Having patiently waited, looking at the top 2, close the gap on each other time and time again. Specifically, Alex Berry on Noel Carmen. Alexander Dimas has played this brilliantly. That pit stop, the way he timed it, it was perfect. Now he probably just might be able to make the pass on Lima and Leonard, and soon enough take that race lead. But it's still lap number 22, folks. We've got about 14 laps left for this race, so it's all to play for, as I always like to say. But Noel Carmen and Alex Berry will be thinking a lot about what just happened.
Dimas really is in a prime position right now. They've already got the heat into the mediums. They've got a really good run ahead of them, because you've got the 2 drivers ahead who have already about 10 laps into their existing compounds. So the medium runner of Jaschke especially is going to have no choice but to head in, and Lima might have to follow suit depending on how well they can keep those tires. Carmen behind is going to put pressure on, but is that going to matter with that 5-second penalty? We'll just have to wait and see.
I expect that the safety car restart, Alexander Dimas picking off the Red Bull very quickly. If Elias Lima can, fend off a Haas and a fresh set of mediums, and someone at the level of Alexander Dimas is one to see. But Leonard Can he hold up the pack long enough to pull off a gap early on, perhaps? To ensure he can continue in the race lead is probably a bit of a incredible ask in the Alpine driver. His teammate having retired now, he's the sole Alpine driver out on track, and every point counts in the constructors fight. But yeah, Alexander Dimas, Noah Coleman, Justin That Racer, another driver who headed into the pits following Dimas' move into the pits. Which begs the question, why didn't the likes of Yuki and Norin follow suit? But regardless, they're still in the mix. In fact, Leo Lund was the one behind Justin That Racer. My apologies. So begs the question, why Leo Lund didn't head into the pits as well? Could have overcome that fumble of sorts, that double stack, and perhaps been the lead McLaren at this point.
Yeah, though, as it stands, Jeschke's going to have control of the race, pacing us again. Familiar fashion, everyone sort of peeling together as we are about to head back into full race pace. Dimas needs to nail the start if they want to use that advantage they have on their hands. Lima's going to be behind, keeping that pressure on, and really sort of a sandwich of mediums. They're going to be fighting to stay afloat, I think, as those medium drivers start to come into their own, as the pace starts to kick in from the softer rubber. Jeschke going to hold the line, hold everyone behind them for the time being. Lima's going to poise themselves for the getaway. Jeschke's going to slow it right to the line, and there you go. Gunning it is the Alpine, gets a good getaway. Lima and Dimas are looking to be trading places right out the gate. Nobody is having any chill here. It's two abreast through first corner. 3, 4, 5 cars all in the mix here. Contact wheel to wheel, fighting tooth and nail to get those positions out as soon as they can. Justin siphoning through the field, immediately getting a great run there. Lima fully out of the race though, is going to be dropping their immediate advantage and is going to be straight out, decking it on the outside of turn 3. And Coleman up into P3 right now, trying to mitigate and do a bit of damage control on that penalty.
Who would have thought Justin That Racer would be the lead Red Bull with Lima out of the race? And Alexander Dimas didn't get the fairy tale start he had hoped for. He's behind Noah Coleman now, with Leonard continue to lead this race. Justin That Racer, what a move around the outside and down the inside, intersected too. My oh my, I mean, tip of the hat. A lot of these drivers deserve a lot of, compassion. At the end of this race, despite that, Alexander Dimas, he'll be questioning himself a lot about that safety car restart. Yuki up in a P5, Leo Lund still in the mix. Not the lead McLaren as he had hoped for, but on the main straight, who's that making that move? It is Justin That Racer. He picks off the Alpine to take the lead of this race on lap number 25. That Red Bull came out of nowhere from P5 all the way up in a P1 in a matter of a lap.
I say, if I was that Red Bull, I'd be pretty happy right now, but I've got to be on my toes because that is not going to be an easy one to defend from, especially from the likes of Noel Coleman, who is, regardless of that penalty, still going to be pushing, if not more, because they have really just got to make up as much time as they can to save what positions they can retake. And you see that immediate aggression coming through as Coleman side by side with Jeschke. They're using their fresher mediums to great effect, swooping around the inside then the outside, and it's going to be P2 for that McLaren. Dimas is going to be following shortly after, throwing a dummy on the inside, poising themselves to take that run. And if I was Dimas, really, I wouldn't be too worried. I of course would be keeping my wits about me, but as long as I can hold firm and take the positions that I need to, I've got a podium on my hands no matter what. P2 once Coleman gets siphoned down the order.
Yeah, and you can see Leonard getting picked off by car after car after car as Yuki dives down the inside of the Alpine. After that, Haas made the pass on Leonard, and I'd imagine that McLaren follows suit as well as they head through Sector 1. It seems like the Alpine, no matter what he can dish out, he can only dish out so much as Leo makes the pass as well, and Leonard has lost 3 positions in the matter of a couple corners.
This is where the age of the mediums really comes into play. He's got about 8 or 9 laps down compared to everyone else in terms of tyre age, and that's going to have serious effects on the amount of pace and the amount of grip you can carry through those corners. That mechanical grip means everything, no matter how aggressive your aero package is. You need that mechanical grip to commit it to the road. And with those tyres starting to fail him, it's only a matter of time before he's going to have to make that call and head back in.
Yeah, Alexander Dimas, it could have been him in the race lead itself, but just in that racer's move, it's almost like it's running as a reel up in my head. But right now, he might just get picked off by the former race leader. Noah Common, fastest lap on the board. Down the inside into turn 1, the McLaren goes. But the Red Bull still has its nose up in front. Contact between the top two. And somehow, Alexander Dimas takes the lead of this race, as that is Justin that racer sent into a spin all the way down to P12.
The gap is so tiny between all of these cars that just a small spin like that, and to be fair, Justin recovered quickly, but it's still leaving them almost 4 seconds behind the rest of the field. And that is really an insurmountable gap at this point that they can't peel back from unless something crazy happens in these last few laps. That could be curtains, as it stands, Dimas leads the race, Noel Carmen P2, Yuki P3, and that is Memento also making a mistake of their own and dropping themselves down just behind, and Apple not falling far from the tree in terms of incidents on that one. Where Justin span, Memento was shortly after. And it's looking rough for some of these drivers, given how hard they fought, how hard they climbed, only to see it fall away in the final 25% of the race.
Oh, there we go on the main straight. It's not Sven Schumacher, it's Yuki in the AlphaTauri around the outside of the McLaren. And he might have just fumbled that braking, as the outside line isn't going to cut it out for him. Noah Common quick with that switch back into turn 1. Yuki ran wide, and that cost him that position he had just earned.
And there, say, looking down the field, is going to be Ailfin trying to make up some of those positions. They've been at the rear end of the race for so long. This is their chance. This is their moment to gain something out of this race, to pick up the pieces of what they might have lost. They've made a move on the Alpine. They're poising up for a move on the Ferrari of Norby. They're keeping so tight to the rear. That pressure is unrelenting from the Sauber team. And as the DRS kicks in, it's going to be all to play for. Is he going to have the gap, though? He's not quite. But he's managing to keep it in range. And I think almost tactically opting to wait for the back straight and the start and finish line in order to get that move done.
Yeah, surely enough, he'd want to mount a challenge to his teammate even soon enough. But on the main straight, ERS in the favor of Norby, in fact. But Alpine will make the pass, but it looks like it peeks down the inside into turn 1. This is similar to Noah Common and Yuki. Alfa Romeo and Ferrari wheel to wheel. There's a retirement right ahead. You can catch that on the right hand side of the screen. That's a McLaren out of this race. That's Leo out of this race. And a full course yellow at that. Makes the pass just in time, Alpine, and he is behind Super Gaming now.
And we're looking on board with Memento just to catch what happened of the action. Leo Lund losing it out of turn 1, piling into the inside wall, getting themselves stricken right in the middle of the track. That is another safety car out on the field, and a key chance for the top players to make a judgment call. Jashki gonna have a prime opportunity to drop those ailing mediums, maybe even go to a soft tire, but it's also looking overcast here. Is it going to be suddenly downpouring? And more importantly, is it going to be enough time, if it was to rain, to make a difference?
That'd be quite the spin to this race. I have watched another race out in Zandvoort where we did see at the tail end of it, last couple of laps, there was a bit of rain and the drivers actually stayed out on the tires they were on, and it was a struggle to the finish. But another significant move we might have just missed as Noah Carmen heads into the pits. I was just going to mention how Noah Carmen had actually made the pass on Alexander Dimas, perhaps while we were on that battle between the Alfa Romeo and the Ferrari. And it seems a couple of the other drivers follow suit of the McLaren driver, who is serving his time penalty, which he had. So Alexander Dimas retakes the lead at this race ahead of Yuki and Alpine, back in the top 3.
I'm not sure what's going on with Carmen and Berry. They both got 5-second penalties both times of going in the pit lane. I'm not really sure what to say on that one, because that I was thinking they were going to serve those penalties in the pits there and get finally back on even keel with the rest of the field, but they got another one to their name, to the point where really they are in some dire straits here. Final 5 laps. It's going to be a good performance, but it's not going to be 5-second penalty mitigating good. No matter which way you slice it, Carmen and Berry are in trouble.
Yeah, Dimas, this race has been quite the roller coaster for us in the commentators box, clearly, and the folks watching. But Dimas, what a roller coaster it's been for him. He went from P3 to P1 down to P2, and now Noah Carmen having pitted, and yet another penalty to his name finds Dimas. Dimas finds himself, in fact, leading this race with clear air, in fact. And Yuki Alfin, the only competitors to clearly mount a challenge on that horse driver ahead of his possible first race win this season. We've got about 6 laps of racing, perhaps just 5 laps of racing we'll find at the end of the next lap. Safety car might just go in after all, but Norby finds himself in the top 5 as well. Justin, that racer, overcoming that incident, finds himself back in the top 5, same position he started in and made that climb up to, in fact.
It's a great recovery
with 5 laps
effort.
to go, I wonder what will unravel at Zandvoort.
Yeah, it's a great recovery effort there from the likes of Justin. So being tapped down the order, only to come and fight their way back up. It's great going there. Coleman and Berry are going to go back into the pits, serve those remaining 5 seconds, because under the safety car, it's all too prevalent that they need to get those penalties off their name. They need to clear the record so that whatever charges they make on the soft tires, no less, with those 5 laps remaining, they got to make those laps count, and they got to get a clear record, which they have done. It's paramount, and they got it done.
Yeah, sure enough. And with the gaps being the way it is at any safety car restart, of course, I can imagine already Justin, that racer, making a pass on 1, if not 2 cars at the safety car restart with that tire advantage. What will the front 5 do? My apologies, not Justin, that racer. In fact, Elliot Noren will have the advantage at the safety car restart.
You do not underestimate those soft runners. They have got the softs that they need to get the heat into, but they've got such a powerful pace advantage, and with the 5 laps, you are in that prime window. You're not going to see any of that drop off that you usually see, being the main downside of the Red Walls. This is prime time. This is race time. Dimas leading the pace of the race as we're about to get into the final restart of the session. Final green flag before the checkered one. The Haas trying to get a good jump on the field. Is going to take him right to the DRS line. Not going to get anywhere near as much of a jump. Yuki right on the tail there. Not going to give them any chance to breathe, as they're going to be swooping it around the outside. And immediately making that challenge there. Norin going to be jumping up not 1, but 2 positions up into P4. And Yuki trying to defend at the same time as Justin is not having a good time. It's down into P11. They've lost it through the banked corner. Just too aggressive there. Almost beaching it on the curbs, but managing to get it just about out alive.
Yeah, P5 to P10, they're going wheel to wheel, corner after corner. It's medium and soft runners going head to head through sector 2. Unfortunate for Justin, that racer. It seemed like that race went from good to bad to good and straight on back to worse. And he has retired from the race itself. Alpine finds himself down in P6. But the front runners, Dimas and Yuki, done a spectacular job. But they might just get picked off by the likes of Norin, Super Gaming, and Memento. Charging on through the back with soft. Leonard making that pass on to Norby on those softs, and clearly soft runners with an incredible advantage at the restart.
Yeah, great going there from Norin, Super Gaming, Memento, all of them having a great charge up the field there and making a decent threat to the top 2 runners. Now they're going to keep fighting, they're going to be fighting for those positions to the bitter end, but the soft runners behind, not just those 3, but the likes of Jashki, who's going to be joining shortly after. Aelfin has about a second gap between themselves and Memento, but Jashki's right behind, and they're going to be asserting that dominance before long. So how much is too much in terms of fighting before the soft runners get their chance to play?
Precisely, and you can see Norin perhaps biding his time, letting Yuki and Alexander Dimas fight it out ever so more. And on lap number 33, he is yet so much closer to Yuki, now merely a tenth, splitting the AlphaTauri and Aston Martin. And forget the main straight. I expect around the outside of the final corner, Elliot Norton making that pass. But Super Gaming, having started at the back of the pack, now up in a P4. I mean, someone pat the man on the back, because what a charge he's been through. Now on lap number 33, it seems like he's set for a possible podium.
Been such a roller coaster, not just the track itself, but the racing and how it's all gone down. It's been nothing short of exhilarating. Final 3 laps here. This is where it's all going to count. Super Gaming on the tail of the Aston Martin. DRS now enabled. They've got the luxury of having that rear wing boost for about 3 laps here, 2.5 in reality, and they got to make that count. It's too far to come back now.
Yeah, for the medium runners, it's just about finishing this race on the same set. Alpine being picked off by Noel Coleman and perhaps even by Leonard soon enough by the looks of it. I imagine Dimas and Yuki will be vulnerable come the last lap, surely enough. If not, now already Norin, he stayed within 3/10 of Yuki for so long, and Super Gaming Momento not too far off either. So they can make the pass just as much as they did early on in the safety car restart on the rest of the medium runners along the pack. I'd imagine Yuki is the one with a lot of work cut out for him in these last 2 laps. He has to fend off that two Aston Martins and an Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, Yuki's running on his last legs right now. He's got barely any battery left. He's got the looming threat of the soft runners behind. Although it looks like a little bit of infighting themselves as Super Gaming flies around the outside of Norin. Trying to get a move done. Doesn't quite secure it though. Is going to keep him out of position and going to keep the Aston Martins, both of them, honest as we get through the rest of the running here. But Yuki, 10% on the battery. You've got Dimas not doing much better on 15%, or just about keeping it over the empty threshold. How much more can they hold on for? They've been using that battery to fend off the soft drivers, but this is where it could come to crumble. They've got to nail these last 2 laps.
I'd imagine Super Gaming is getting very impatient, staying behind Elliot Norton. Clearly, it seems like he has more pace and Momento as well. He's now within 2/10 of Super Gaming, gets even more closer, but he finds himself in a Aston Martin sandwich, Super Gaming, so clearly he's not having the best times out there. In the penultimate lap of Zandvoort, I reckon Norton's just trying to recharge his battery to mount a fight at the last lap, but I don't think he can make it as the entire train weaves right to left, trying to deny as much slipstream as they can to the runner right behind. It's still Alexander Dimas leading this race on the final lap ahead of Yuki, Elliot Norton, Super Gaming, Momento, and Noel Carmen, our former race leader, in the top 6.
So Dimas has to nail this, and it's looking like he's doing a good job. He's still got 10% to his name. Norin's completely cooked it. He's got no battery, no shot, and Super Gaming is going to capitalize it while they have the chance. Throws it around the outside. Can't fully commit to a move, though. They are just as much out of battery, and he's running out of time. He can't afford to wait. He's charging up whatever battery he can to throw something in, a sort of last Hail Mary before the checkered flag falls. Has the DRS, has as much battery as they can muster, but it's not gonna be enough to push for that podium. And looking at the top of the field, that Haas, Alexander Dimas, I think they've done it.
Yeah, around the final corner, it is Alexander Dimas who'll take the checkered flag to win in Zandvoort despite everything thrown at the man as Yuki comes across the line to finish on the podium 2 races in a row, followed by Elliot Norton, who'll have to settle for P3. Super Gaming, it almost seemed like the podium was in sights, but we'll take driver of the day at Zandvoort.
Yeah, great driving to be had from everyone there. A really good job, honestly. So many changing conditions, so many changing variables. Safety car coming in, getting overcast. Drivers had to handle all these variables in real time, and they did an excellent job there, honestly. It's great to see how well they did. And really just for a lot of them, despite their own mistakes, they did make really good on the situation at hand. And a lot of them can walk away with some much deserved points. There we go. So podium coming out now. And you can see the different colors, different liveries and overalls. AlphaTauri P2, Aston Martin P3, but it's going to be Alexander Dimas in the Haas. The white, blue and red taking the top spot on the podium.
Brilliantly done, Alexander Dimas. I can't wait to catch up with him post-race, but clearly, he, despite everything that was thrown at him, to think that at one point it seemed like a lost opportunity with that fight with Noel Carmen, having Justin that racer, making that move around the outside, taking the lead of the race, but somehow he found himself yet again in the position of being in the lead of the race, and at the tail end of it, Yuki had to fend off the soft runners, so he was with clear air up in front to take the race win. And yeah, Yuki as well, 2 races in a row being on the podium. I think he's going to get used to it. And Elliot Norton to follow, newbie on the podium as well. Super Gaming, really got a feel for him. Missed out on the podium at the last lap.
And it's a great job from there. Yeah, so key points, key decisions being made. One of the drivers that I hope, let's say, doesn't take it too hard on the chin, say, Noel Carmen. They had a really tough time. I think those 2 penalties, those 2 pit lane penalties, are really sort of what did it in for the race at that point. Is to get it once would have been fine. We had that second safety car. We had the opportunity to waive that penalty and still come out in a semi-decent position. But it was the second time. They were in the midfield. They had no choice but to drop those 5-second penalties by going in again. That is really what sort of sewed the death nail for that race. And not just them, but Alex Berry as well. They made really good pace. They made really good time on their situation, but those 2 speeding in the pit lane penalties, it wasn't meant to be. Not this time.
Yeah. You know, looking at Alexander Dimas on the podium, in fact, with the race win, you know, one should think what could have been for the entirety of the Haas team if Joris had stayed in the race. Regardless, I'm pretty sure he'll be learning a lot of this. And even the rest of the drivers, about 7 drivers who had retired, lot to learn for them. Even from quali, in fact, with the way it turned out, quite the doozy of a race, if you could say. And yeah, I can't wait to hear from the drivers post-race, the ones who managed to finish on the podium. And yeah, who knows what Dimas might just be feeling right now.
I think that race was one more of attrition, really, than it was anything else. It was so many drivers that we lost over the course of that race, whether it was a freak accident, whether it was a spin, or whether it was just sort of simply opting to retire. Like, you had the likes of some of the rear-end runners, like Alberto Barros, of course, dropping down big time, having a few spins, and really having no choice but to retire. They were a lap down, couldn't really unlap themselves in any meaningful measure. They were just too far behind, had to call it quits. But then you had, say, the likes of Leo Lund throwing it in the inside of turn 1, and it just goes to show. And really, this is just the commentary I'll be seeing from Baku. This is what I'd expect to talk about in Baku, not in Zandvoort, not in the Netherlands, but here we are, say, unforgiving circuit.
Yeah, and to think what's in store for the rest of the season. We've only just gotten started to some extent. And Sven Schumacher, I wonder, when he watches this race, what he might be feeling. Seeing his teammate on the podium, maybe he could have been there alongside him. Maybe he, probably dodged a bullet in some sense by sitting it out. It was his home race, in fact, as he had mentioned last time out. So maybe he's a bit disappointed. But regardless, it is Thanksgiving weekend, so maybe he was a bit busy. Regardless, no Carmen. Hopefully we get to see more of him going into the next race as well. Perhaps a redemption outing of sorts. But yeah, Super Gaming P17 to P4 got to be the highlight of the race in some sense.
Yeah, I'd say good performance then, Dem. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to one of the drivers out on track. Doesn't look like we have anyone. But before we wrap up and before we move on, key point. And I have a theory. that they being Coleman and Berry, I don't think they knew about the reduced limit on the pit lane. So 80 kilometers an hour, or it's 60. It's actually 60 kilometers an hour on the entry.
It was unfortunate to see, really, Carmen and Alex Berry both pitting to overcome that previous penalty they had received and getting one more slapped onto them, just like that.
Yeah, I'd say, and it is a great job from the drivers who managed to make the best of the situation, and it is one. Looks like we actually do have a couple drivers to talk to, so I think it's only fair. And first one we're going to be getting a chance to chat to is none other than Alexander Dimas. To say, sorry to drag you in on very quick notice, mate. Looks like they say popping in and out there very quickly, but let's get them. I
think we can get Yuki in. Okay, Dimas it is.
Yeah, I'd say, Alexander Dimas, how are you feeling, mate? Great performance out there today.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
No, it was great. I didn't expect to win because my qualifying was not so good. I placed 5th, but I know I wouldn't compete for the qualifying, but the race was more important for me. I also made more of a race setter and looked really into the strategy. So yeah, and people ahead of me were aggressive, so I could win from that.
Yeah, I love to pick your brain, Dimas, about a particular moment in the race. Right after one of the safety car restarts, it seemed like Justin, that racer, around the outside of Sector 1 and Sector 2, got the jump on a bunch of cars, the race leader himself as well, Noah Carmen, and managed to get into P2 right behind Leonard before taking the lead of the race. How were you feeling at that moment? Because it seemed like you were supposed to be the one to take the early race lead at that moment.
Yeah, I didn't see what happened. It was a bit of chaos after that restart. Like, a 3 wide or something.
Exactly.
Much contact, so I didn't know what happened there, but it was chaos. Luckily, no damage at the front wing, so yeah, I'm happy with that.
There you go. I think one thing for me is that if you had to pin down one thing that was the main decider in your race win today, what would it be? Was it, say, just to say managing the situation, maybe the strategy, maybe say pace on track, getting some key moves done? If you had to pick one thing, what would it be?
I think the strategy and pace, because like when I pitted, the safety car came out. It was like a lucky moment, but also I needed to have the pace later on after the restart to keep ahead of Gucci and the soft runners as well. So yeah, that's what I think.
There's great stuff there. Say, Sardek, anything?
Nah, I was gonna highlight that pit stop of his after that safety car came out. The first full course yellow, I imagine, leaving Noah Carmen and Alex Berry and even the other McLaren driver and Leo out on track. It was instinctive reaction heading into the pits, and I believe Justin, that racer, followed suit into the pits. So yeah, clearly, I think we've not seen the entirety of what Dimas is capable of. I expect him to come out on top on more than one occasion again. Any particular race you're looking forward for, Dimas?
What is it?
So, any particular race on the calendar looking forward to?
I don't know really. We'll just see what's about to come.
Great stuff. Well, so you can take pride in your performance out there today, mate. Say it's a well-deserved P1, brilliant performance. Didn't put a foot wrong there, and you've certainly rocketed yourself quite high into the driver's standings. There you go. Say, take a rest. Looking forward to seeing what you bring to the table.
Hope I see you next time. Bye.
There you go. So that is Alexander Dimas, and we got one more waiting in the wings that we can talk to. That is going to be Yuki. Now, how are we doing, my friends? Of course, a really great performance out there today. So, can you describe how your race went in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, the first few laps were a bit disappointing because I had connection issues, and so I was last after the first lap. Yeah, I felt quite good in the opening laps of the race. The pace was very good in my opinion, so yeah, I could keep up with the guys ahead of me, and yeah, it was the strategy worked out really well. I mean, I thought that I will lose a lot of positions in the last, I don't know, 8 laps, because the soft runners were behind me, and so I thought I will lose positions, but I managed to stay ahead of them, and I'm very happy about about P2, because Noel got not that many points, so yeah.
Yeah, but in some sense, it's a lot of points in comparison to your teammate who missed this race. 2 consecutive podiums, Yuki. It seems like you're really getting into the groove of staying out in front and, reducing any kind of mistakes which you might have seen back in Spain. How are you feeling fighting it out up in front? This time around, there was Dimas up in front. Was there a moment it seemed like you could take the race lead itself?
I'm not sure, because he was very fast in the last laps, and I think I had more wings on because I gained a lot of time in the middle sector, but then just on the straights I had to look to stay ahead of Iliot, I think was it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then yeah.
Some great running out there. So I think it's we kind of shared the perspective in the comms box that it's a rough start. Really didn't look like things were going in your favor, but really picked it up towards the end as this situation evolved. And how would you think you would have done had a safety car not been out? Had it just been in, say, a normal, relatively a calm race? How do you think you would have fared?
I'm not sure, because I think the 5-second time penalties of Noel and the other guy was very good for me, because they drove really hard and raced very hard against each other. So I'm not sure. Maybe I could have managed to get into the P5, but yeah.
There you go. So I'll take anything.
Nah, I think we're gonna get him here on more than one occasion. Surely enough, 2 consecutive. He's gonna make it a hat trick maybe in the next race. He's clearly off to a good start, and hopefully we see Sven alongside him. Good luck, Yuki.
Yeah, thank you.
And there you go. That brings us forward to our, say, third driver to talk to. That is going to be none other than Elliot Norin. How?
Oh my god, thank you.
We were always going to bring you in here, mate. Always.
Ah, so kind.
I was just saying hadn't mentioned you frontside, but what a great time to talk about. I mean, your race. I mean, from my perspective, great stuff. Didn't put it wrong. Really sort of capitalized in the late game. What was, to say, the final call in your head? So I think you went to the softs, kind of ran that front run in charge on the softs. Do you want us to describe your race?
Follow them. Yeah, chaos. But it was controlled after all, and that was the main thing. I haven't had a clean race in like half years. Feels like someone always spins in front of me. My fucking pedal falls off or something. Always some bullshit. But finally, I just managed to go from the start to the finish without any severe problems.
Sometimes that's what it's all
pretty fucking
about.
ecstatic.
That's sometimes just what it's all about. It's like, yeah, brilliant drivers. Sometimes it's just bad luck gets thrown their way left, right, and center, and it's finally swung your way. And say, you finally got a chance to showcase your talents, and there you go, P3. Great stuff from you, mates. And so before I say pass it off to my co-com, is there anyone that you are looking out for on track? So if you had to pick someone in terms of maybe, say, a rival, someone to keep an eye on for yourself and maybe for the audience, who would you pin down to be, say, the main driver you've got your eyes locked on?
Well, considering Leo said he would win today, I can tease him a bit more now then and say he's my rival. The guy who crashed out just on his own. Again. Oh dear, Leo.
Well, there
You know,
go.
he has sweated for like 2 weeks for this.
So he was
No
looking
cap.
forward to Zandvoort and didn't quite go his way, but clearly went your way. You're on the podium, but did it seem like Super Gaming was close, reaching for that podium? Because the last couple of laps he was really breathing down your gearbox, wasn't it? The Alfa Romeo behind you.
Shout out to him. He did amazing to not take me out or simply just driving clean. There was no idiotic dive bombs or anything. Just kept it realistic and didn't absolutely send the hell out of me.
Of course, getting incredibly close at the last corner of the last lap even. But yeah, brilliant. Congratulations on the podium. Hopefully we get to hear from you once again going into the next couple of races. See you on the podium again.
Thank you.
And there we go. That brings us to the end of the interviews and the end of the stream here. But before we go, just a reminder, folks, that next round takes us to Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix, round 4. And I mean, this is, I'm going to be honest, one of my favorite tracks. A little bit of a divisive of an opinion there. People have those sort of icons pinned up. They've got, say, Spa-Francorchamps, Monaco, and some other iconic tracks. For me, it's Canada. I don't know how you feel on it, Sartek, but it's just something about it. I can't quite describe, but there's just a certain level of challenge to that track that really brings out the best in drivers.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it, specifically Sector 2. Maybe we can crown a champion in some sense with the Wall of Champions, who knows? And of course, there's that hairpin in Sector 3 as well, and the back straight. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the action out in Montreal. I almost thought it was Monaco, but if anything, after what I saw at Zandvoort, you can expect action every race this season in F5.
And of course, if you want the best racing action, keep it PSGL, say PCF5. We will see you next week for the Canadian Grand Prix. Last time, so for me and Sartek signing out here, and we will see you very soon. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy some of the other streams. Be sure to check out our sponsor, GT Omega. Use code PSGL at checkout for a healthy discount. And we will see you next time.
Cheers, folks.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.